The vast chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Ambassador Lorvax of the Mavunian Conclave approached the central podium. His crystalline exoskeleton caught the light from the artificial stars embedded in the ceiling, casting prismatic patterns across the gathered representatives of over 300 spacefaring civilizations. "Esteemed colleagues," Lorvax began, his translator converting his ultrasonic vibrations into the standard galactic lingua franca. "I come before you with grave concerns regarding the species from the third planet of the Sol system, designation humans." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Most had only passing familiarity with the bipedal creatures who had achieved faster-than-light travel less than a century ago, practically infants by cosmic standards. The Mavunian observation fleet has documented concerning behaviors that warrant immediate quarantine protocols, Lorvax continued, his upper appendages waving in agitation. "These beings are unlike any we have encountered in our 12,000 years of space exploration." From her seat in the auxiliary diplomatic section, Veldara Nix, senior xenoanthropologist of the Arlanxian Science Academy, leaned forward. Unlike most of her colleagues, she had spent decades studying human history and culture. "Ambassador Lorvax, surely you exaggerate," called out Prelate Zoom of the Ganthor hegemony. The massive, gelatinous being's surface rippled with bioluminescent patterns expressing skepticism. "They control merely 17 solar systems. Their technological advancement, while rapid, remains primitive compared to even our junior member species." Lorvax's crystalline structure darkened, a sign of intense emotion. "It is not their technology that concerns us, but their psychology. Humans exhibit paradoxical traits that defy our understanding. They are simultaneously fragile yet demonstrate inexplicable resilience. They are predictably irrational. Most concerning, they respond to threats not with appropriate caution, but with escalating aggression." Veldara watched as the Council's dismissive attitude hardened. She had witnessed this before. The arrogance of ancient civilizations when confronted with species that didn't fit their evolutionary models. "The Mavunian Conclave formally requests restriction of human expansion beyond their current territory and limited diplomatic engagement," Lorvax concluded. High Chancellor Orithian of the Void Communion rose from his hovering dais, his vapor form, body condensing to indicate serious deliberation. "Ambassador, while we respect the Conclave's concerns, the evidence presented seems anecdotal rather than substantive. The humans have shown themselves to be eager trade partners and quick to adapt to our protocols." "That adaptability is precisely what concerns us," Lorvax insisted. "They observe, they learn, they evolve at a cognitive rate that defies biological norms." Prelate Zoom's dismissive gesture sent ripples through his gelatinous form. "The Council will not impose restrictions based on speculative xenophobia. The motion is denied. The humans will continue their integration into the galactic community under standard protocols." As the chamber erupted in discussion, Veldara slipped away to her research vessel. Her encrypted communications terminal was blinking with an urgent message from her human colleague, Dr. Ilara Frost, stationed on the frontier world Proxima Centauri 4. The message was brief but chilling. "They've found us. The Void Communion Fleet. Not here for diplomacy. Preliminary bombardment has begun. Tell the Council, humans don't surrender. They escalate." Veldara's 6 hearts accelerated their beating. She had warned her superiors about human military doctrine, but no one had listened. If the Void Communion had indeed attacked a human colony, the response would not follow the careful, measured approaches familiar to Galactic Council species. The humans had a term for it in their history: shock and awe. And the Council had just dismissed their only warning. 2 solar cycles before the Council meeting, the Void Communion's advance fleet had emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. Fleet Commander Netherin observed the Unremarkable human colony world through the sensory membrane of his command vessel. Primitive defenses, minimal orbital infrastructure, reported his second, Lysithea. As intelligence suggested, Commander, Netharin's vapor form condensed with satisfaction. The Void Communion had spent centuries absorbing lesser species, adding their biological and technological distinctiveness to their own. Humans represented an unexploited resource, adaptable bodies that could withstand environments toxic to most communion host forms. Initiate standard subjugation protocol, Netharin ordered. No communication. Their technology can't detect our cloaked landing parties. On the surface of Proxima Centauri 4, Dr. Ilara Frost stood on the observation deck of New Anchorage Colony, watching the sunset paint the sky crimson and gold. After 5 years establishing the Xenobiology Research Station, the colony had grown from a scientific outpost to a thriving community of 20,000. Colony Security Chief Caden Reeve joined her, his weathered face creased with concern. Doctor, our deep space arrays picked up something unusual. Gravitational distortions consistent with large vessels dropping out of hyperspace. Ilara frowned. The supply shipment isn't due for 2 weeks. Exactly, Caden replied. And whatever these are, they're big. Military big. Have you notified Earth Command? Message sent, but at this distance, he didn't need to finish. Even with quantum entanglement communications, response would take hours. The first bombardment came without warning. Precision strikes targeting communication arrays, defense systems, and power infrastructure. Within minutes, New Anchorage was plunged into chaos. In the colony's emergency bunker, Governor Isolde Niara maintained remarkable calm as she addressed the gathered leadership team. Unlike many governors of frontier colonies, Isolde had served 20 years in Earth's special forces before entering civil administration. This is a textbook first strike, she stated, studying the damage reports. They're following invasion protocols. Disable communications, create confusion, then deploy ground forces. Who are they? Demanded a colony council member. Why would anyone attack us? We're a research colony. Questions for later, Isolde replied, her voice hardening with resolve. Right now, we implement Defense Protocol Thermopylae. The gathered officials exchanged glances. Everyone on Proxima Centauri, IV, knew what Thermopylae meant. Outside, the first Void Communion landing crafts breached the atmosphere. Commander Netharin monitored the invasion remotely, noting with satisfaction the minimal resistance. These humans would make excellent adaptation stock. Their biological versatility was precisely what the Communion needed for expansion into previously uninhabitable regions. Landing parties report successful deployment, Commander, Lysithea reported. Minimal human casualties as ordered. They appear completely surprised. Excellent. Netharin's vapor form rippled. Begin processing of captured specimens immediately. Priority on their leadership and scientific personnel. What Netharin couldn't see was Governor Isolde activating the colony's hidden defenses, technologies, classified beyond the knowledge of even the Galactic Council. As Communion forces moved deeper into the settlement, motion sensors tracked their movements, feeding data to the colony's AI defense system. And beneath the colony, in hardened bunkers, slept weapons designed for the worst-case scenario. First, contact gone catastrophically wrong. Send the message, Isolde told Ilara. Exact wording as rehearsed. Then execute Schwarzschild protocol. As Ilara transmitted her warning to Veldara Nix, Isolde prepared to teach the invaders why humans had survived extinction events that should have ended them. Why Earth's history was written in the blood of those who underestimated human ingenuity when cornered, and why shock and awe was not just military doctrine, but a fundamental aspect of humanity's approach to existential threats. Fleet Commander Netharin observed the subjugation of New Anchorage with growing unease. 6 hours into the operation, and something was wrong. Report, he demanded of his ground commander. Resistance is unusual, Commander. came the hesitant reply. "We've secured 62% of the colony infrastructure, but human combatants aren't following. Expected surrender patterns. They're adapting to our tactics in real time." Netheryn's vapor form darkened. "Casualties?" 37% of landing forces unaccounted for. They're using the environment against us. Improvised traps, redirected terraforming equipment as weapons, and their command structure remains intact despite our targeting protocols. Impossible, Netheryn thought. The Void Communion had conquered 17 species across 3 galactic arms. Their tactical algorithms were perfected over millennia. How could primitive humans counter them so effectively? On the colony surface, Governor Isolde coordinated the defense from a mobile command center disguised as a maintenance vehicle. Beside her, Caden Reeve directed civilian evacuation to the emergency shelters built into the mountains. Phase 1. Complete, Caden reported. Civilians secure. Communion forces concentrated in sectors 3 through 7. Isolde nodded grimly. Begin Phase 2. Deploy the chimeras. Deep beneath the colony, hermetically sealed chambers hissed open. Inside were the chimeras, combat mechs piloted by elite operators neurally linked to their machines. Each stood 7 meters tall, armored, with experimental metamaterials designed to absorb energy weapons. Communion ground forces never saw them coming. The chimeras erupted from hidden access points, their weapons specifically calibrated to the electromagnetic frequency of Communion technology, a vulnerability identified years ago by Earth intelligence. In orbit, Lysithea's urgent report cut through Netheryn's complacency. "Commander, we've lost contact with sectors 3 through 7. Ground forces report hostile mechanized units of unknown configuration. Our weapons appear ineffective." Netheryn's form rippled with disbelief. "Impossible. Their technology is primitive. Redirect the second-wave landing craft to these coordinates. Authorize maximum force protocols." As the Communion's second wave descended, Dr. Ilara Frost finalized the activation sequence for the colony's true defense system. While the chimeras were impressive, they were merely the distraction. "Schwarzschild satellites online," she reported to Isolde. "Targeting solutions acquired. In geosynchronous orbit around Proxima Centauri 4, seemingly inert satellites suddenly activated. Designed to appear as weather monitoring systems to casual observation, they were actually housing miniaturized gravity weapons, technology Earth had developed but never publicly acknowledged. The first Communion warship discovered their existence when localized gravitational forces suddenly increased 10,000-fold around its propulsion system. The massive vessel crumpled inward like paper in a fist before exploding in a shower of exotic particles. Aboard his command ship, Netheryn watched in horror as 3 more vessels suffered the same fate in rapid succession. "Impossible," he whispered. "They're a pre-Class 3 civilization. They shouldn't have gravitational manipulation technology." "Commander," Lysithea's voice wavered, "we're detecting energy signatures consistent with antimatter weapons powering up on the surface." For the first time in his 3-century existence, Netheryn felt fear. The intelligence assessments had been catastrophically wrong. These weren't simple colonists. This wasn't a defenseless research outpost. It was a trap. And the Void Communion had sprung it perfectly. As his ship shuddered under the impact of gravitational distortions, Netheryn made his decision. "All forces, immediate withdrawal. Abandon ground troops. Emergency hyperspace jump to fallback coordinates." But the humans weren't finished. As the Communion fleet struggled to escape, a quantum entanglement signal from new anchorage reached Earth's Defense Command. Within moments, a human battle group that had been waiting just outside the system dropped out of hyperspace directly in the Communion fleet's escape vector. The trap was complete. The emergency session of the Galactic Council erupted into chaos as Veldara Nix presented her evidence. The holographic display showed the decimated remains of the Void Communion fleet scattered across the Proxima Centauri system. "This cannot be," exclaimed Prelate Zuum, his gelatinous form pulsating with agitation. The Void Communion possesses technology centuries beyond human capability. High Chancellor Orithian's vapor form had grown pale and diffuse, a sign of extreme distress. Ambassador Nix, are you suggesting the Void Communion, a founding member of this council, launched an unprovoked attack on a human colony? The evidence is irrefutable, Veldara replied, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the holographic images. And more concerning is what this reveals about human defensive capabilities. They were prepared. The question this council should be asking is, how did they know to be prepared? A hush fell over the assembly as the implications sank in. Humans had appeared on the galactic stage less than a century ago, seemingly naive and eager to learn. Yet they had just decisively defeated one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in known space. Ambassador Lorvax approached the central podium, crystalline structure pulsing with vindication. As I warned this council, humans are not what they appear to be. The Mavunian Conclave has been monitoring their information networks for decades. They have thousands of fictional narratives about first contact scenarios, the majority depicting invasion and conflict. Fiction is not policy, objected a representative from the Heliox Consortium. But it reveals psychology, countered Lorvax. Humans prepare for worst-case scenarios as a matter of cultural instinct. They plan for betrayal, invasion, and existential threat, not because they've experienced them from cosmic neighbors, but because they've experienced them from each other. Throughout their history, the council chamber grew quiet as classified footage from the battle played. The Chimera mechs tearing through Communion ground forces, the gravity weapons imploding warships, the perfectly executed ambush by the human fleet. What do they want? Now? Asked a junior representative from the Outer Rim worlds. Veldara gestured, and the holographic display changed to show a formal communication from Earth's Unified Defense Command. They request an emergency meeting of the full council, including all member species. They are sending Admiral Ravenna Kasaki as their representative. The Admiral has full authority to negotiate terms. Terms? Orithian's vapor form condensed with alarm. They speak as if they've declared war on the entire council. No, Veldara corrected. They speak as if they believe we might have sanctioned the Void Communion's actions. They are giving us an opportunity to prove otherwise. As the council prepared for the human representative's arrival, Veldara accessed her private research files. For years, she had studied human history, their wars, their peace treaties, their philosophical evolution. One consistent pattern emerged. Humans extended trust tentatively, but betrayal was met with overwhelming force. The Void Communion had made a catastrophic error. They had assumed technological superiority equated to military advantage. They had dismissed human adaptability as primitive unpredictability, rather than recognizing it as their greatest strength. Worse, they had attacked a human colony believing it to be defenseless, only to discover it was a heavily armed forward operating base disguised as a scientific outpost. And now Admiral Kasake was coming, not to apologize or explain, but to deliver a message. Veldara could only hope the council would finally listen. Admiral Ravenna Kasake strode into the great chamber of the Galactic Council with the confidence of a predator entering a field of prey. Her dress uniform bore minimal decoration, just the silver stars of her rank and the patch of Earth's Unified Defense Command. At 57, with steel-gray hair cropped close to her scalp and eyes the color of Arctic ice, she carried herself with the gravity of someone who had made life-and-death decisions affecting millions. The council, normally a cacophony of diplomatic posturing, fell silent. Distinguished representatives, Kasaki began without preamble, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. I come before you under circumstances none of us desired. 3 standard days ago, forces of the Void Communion launched an unprovoked attack on our research colony at Proxima Centauri IV. Their intentions were clear: conquest, subjugation, and biological harvesting of human beings. She paused. letting her gaze sweep across the gathered representatives. The attack failed, comprehensively. The Void Communion lost 37 warships and approximately 15,000 personnel. Humanity lost 112 civilians and military personnel. Murmurs swept through the chamber. The casualty disparity was shocking. "I am not here to gloat over this victory," Kasaki continued. "I am here to understand whether this attack was sanctioned by the Galactic Council, tacitly approved by member states, or truly the isolated action of a rogue power." High Chancellor Orithian floated forward, his vapor form fully condensed in formal diplomatic configuration. "Admiral Kasaki, I assure you with the full authority of this council that we had no knowledge of the Void Communion's intentions. Their actions violate our most fundamental principles of interspecies relations." Kasaki's expression remained impassive. "Then you will have no objection to our terms." She activated a holographic display showing a comprehensive treaty document. Humanity requires the following. First, the immediate expulsion of the Void Communion from the Galactic Council and all associated trade networks. Second, reparations to the families of those killed in the attack. Third, unrestricted access to Void Communion territory for verification of disarmament. Fourth, the surrender of all Void Communion leadership involved in planning the attack to face justice under human law. The chamber erupted in protests. Such terms were unprecedented. The effective dismantling of one of the oldest cosmic civilizations. Prelate Zoom's gelatinous form pulsated with outrage. "This is extortion! You cannot demand the destruction of an entire civilization over one military miscalculation!" Admiral Kasaki's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Miscalculation? They attempted to harvest our people. Intelligence recovered." From captured Communion officers confirms their intent to use humans as biological adaptation stock, essentially living raw materials. She stepped closer to the central podium, her composure unwavering. "Let me be absolutely clear about humanity's position. We joined this galactic community in good faith. We adapted to your protocols. We shared technology and culture. We believed we were joining a community of equals." Her voice hardened. "Instead, we discovered that at least one founding member viewed us as livestock. The question now before this council is simple. Do you stand with civilization or do you stand with barbarism?" Veldara Nix observed the proceedings with growing alarm. The Admiral's ultimatum was forcing the council into an impossible position. Either surrender one of their founding members to human justice, a concept many species found alien and disturbing, or risk open conflict with a species that had just demonstrated military capabilities far beyond their apparent technological level. Ambassador Lorvax approached the human admiral, crystal structure pulsing with cautious diplomatic signals. "Admiral, while the Council condemns the Void Communion's actions, your terms effectively demand the cultural extinction of a species that has existed for over 50,000 years. Surely there is room for more measured justice." Admiral Kasaki's expression softened marginally. "Ambassador Lorvax, I acknowledge your concern. Humanity does not seek the destruction of the Void Communion as a species. We seek accountability for those who ordered and attempted genocide." She gestured to her aide, who modified the holographic display. "We are prepared to accept alternative arrangements for the lower-ranking Communion members who were following orders. But on the core principles, expulsion from the Council, reparations, and justice for the leadership, we cannot compromise." As the Council descended into urgent deliberations, Veldara approached the Admiral privately. "You knew they would attack," she said quietly. "Proxima Centauri IV was bait." Admiral Kasake studied the xenoanthropologist carefully. "We suspected someone would eventually. Humanity has learned through bitter experience that new territories must be defended. We prepare for the worst, while hoping for the best." "And now?" Veldara asked. "What does humanity truly want from the greater galactic community?" For the first time, Kasake smiled, a slight, measured expression. "The same thing we've always wanted, Ambassador Nix. A fair chance to prove our worth, and the absolute certainty that no one will ever mistake our gentleness for weakness again." One standard year after the Proxima Centauri incident, the Great Chamber of the Galactic Council had been transformed. Where once the Void Communion's massive delegation had dominated the central tier, now stood representatives of 17 previously unknown spacefaring civilizations, species that had been avoided contact with the Council for centuries, fearing exactly the kind of exploitation the humans had suffered and defeated. Veldara Nix, recently appointed as Chief Diplomatic Liaison to Earth, watched as Admiral Kasake concluded the integration ceremony for the newest council members. The Admiral had exchanged her military uniform for the formal diplomatic attire of Earth's ambassador, though her bearing remained unmistakably that of a warrior. "The Alliance of Free Species thanks the Council for this historic recognition," Kasaki stated, gesturing to the new delegates. "With the ratification of the Proxima Accords, we establish a new foundation for galactic cooperation, one based on mutual respect rather than technological or biological hierarchies." High Chancellor Orithian, who had narrowly survived the political fallout from the Void Communion's actions, inclined his vapor form in acknowledgement. "The Council acknowledges its failures of oversight and welcomes the reforms introduced under the Accords. The era of predatory expansion is ended." As the formal proceedings concluded, Veldara joined Kasaki in the diplomatic antechamber where Dr. Elara Frost waited. The xenobiologist bore subtle scars from the Battle of New Anchorage, but her eyes reflected triumph rather than trauma. "The Communion remnants have withdrawn to their core worlds," Elara reported. "The rehabilitation program is proceeding as planned. Most of their subject species have chosen independence under Alliance protection." "And the leadership?" Veldara asked carefully. Admiral Kasaki's expression remained neutral. "Justice has been served. Not vengeance, despite what many on the Council feared. The architects of the attack have been sentenced to assist in rebuilding what they sought to destroy." Veldara studied her human colleagues with newfound understanding. The past year had revealed much about human nature that contradicted the Council's assumptions. Where the ancient civilizations had expected vengeful extermination campaigns against the defeated Communion, humans had instead implemented rehabilitation, reparation, and reform. "You've changed everything," Veldara observed. "In a single year, you've restructured a political order that stood for 50,000 years." "We merely exposed what was already broken," Elara replied. "A stable society cannot be built on exploitation, no matter how technologically advanced it becomes." The chamber doors opened to admit Governor Isolde Niara, now serving as Earth's Security Council representative. Her military bearing complemented Kasaki's, though her approach to galactic security had proven more nuanced than many expected. "The final monitoring stations are online," Isolde reported. "The early warning network now covers all Alliance territories. Any future attempts at surprise aggression will be detected long before they reach populated systems." Kasaki nodded with satisfaction. "Then we've fulfilled our mandate. Protection without provocation. Strength without domination." As the humans discussed final details, Veldara reflected on the warning Ambassador Lorvax had delivered to the Council before the crisis, a warning they had foolishly ignored. Humans were indeed unlike any species the galactic community had encountered. Their evolutionary path had created beings who constantly prepared for the worst even while hoping for the best. The Void Communion had mistaken this preparedness for paranoia, this adaptability for primitive unpredictability. They had ignored the warnings about humanity's unique relationship with conflict and crisis, how they thrived under pressure that would break other species, how they transformed existential threats into opportunities for growth. Most significantly, the Communion had failed to understand humanity's dual nature, capable of terrible violence when threatened, yet equally capable of remarkable compassion in victory. Outside the diplomatic chamber, the newly reformed Galactic Council was adjusting to a fundamental shift in power dynamics. The ancient hierarchies based solely on technological advancement had given way to more complex evaluations of civilizational worth. Species once dismissed as primitive now had equal voice in council proceedings, their unique perspectives valued rather than marginalized. "What happens now?" Veldara asked as they prepared to return to the council session. Admiral Kasake gazed through the massive viewport at the stars beyond. "Now, we build something better. Not human dominance. We've seen where single-species hegemony leads. Instead, we create a true community of equals. And if others follow the communion's path?" Veldara pressed. "If they test humanity's resolve?" Kasaki's expression hardened momentarily, a glimpse of the uncompromising force that had brought the Void Communion to its knees. "They'll find we keep our promises. All of them. Both our promise to defend ourselves without mercy when attacked, and our promise to show grace in victory." She turned to face the council chambers, where representatives of over 400 species now gathered in unprecedented unity. "They ignored the warnings about humans once. I doubt anyone will make that mistake again." As they returned to the Great Chamber, Veldara understood the truth that the Void Communion had learned too late. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their technology or even their adaptability. It was their capacity to imagine, to envision both the darkest possibilities and the brightest futures, and to prepare for both with equal determination. They had been forged in the crucible of their own violent history, tempered by challenges that should have destroyed them, and emerged not as conquerors but as protectors. The galaxy had needed their unique perspective without realizing it. The Void Communion had ignored the warnings about humans and paid the ultimate price. Not through extinction as they had feared, but through transformation into something better than they had been. In their defeat, they had found redemption. In humanity's victory, the galaxy had found hope. And that perhaps was the most unexpected outcome of all.